Hey YouTube, welcome back to another History Teacher Reacts video with Mr. Terry as I continue my search for historical knowledge found here on the internet. Alright, today's video comes from our awesome patrons over at Patreon, and this was the closest poll we have ever had. This week, the vote count was in favor by only one. And the video that was chosen this week was, how did Europe react to the fall of Constantinople? And this is by History Matters, another favorite of this channel. So I'm definitely excited to check this out. All right, this timing is actually really good because right now, if you're watching this live or around the day that this is coming out, this is like in my classes, we're talking about the fall of Constantinople and talking about its effects, and this is perfect timing if you are watching this again fairly live, because you might be in a timeline like this if you are in the United States and taking something like AP World History. You're probably around this time right now, so hopefully that has good timing for you. But regardless, this is an important topic no matter when you're talking about it. All right, if you would like to get involved in future polls, all pledge levels over on Patreon get to vote in the weekly poll, and then higher levels get some cool history merch and stuff like this, like the shirt I'm wearing now, and some other cool things. So definitely check that out if you haven't. And if you have not yet subbed to History Matters, go down to the link below. They are a great channel. Link to the original video is down there. You should definitely, at the very least, if you're subbed, you should definitely give it a like and view and all of that great stuff so we can support these awesome channels. And if you like what we're doing here, love to have you as a sub, and to like the video would be really appreciated as well. All right, let's go ahead and get started. All right, let's get started now. We're going to be, I'm assuming, starting with the siege of Constantinople or whatever, so we got to prepare for war. But let's see how Europe reacted, because I think this is a really important question, is how did they react? Was it a big piece of news or not? We know historically it is a very big thing, but what about the people at the time? I think that's a great question to answer, so let's check it out.
The fall of Constantinople in 1453 is considered by many to be one of the most important events in human history.
Agreed.
To some modern historians, it marks the end of the medieval period, and to others, it merely marks the final end of the long, drawn-out decline of the Roman Empire and the beginnings of Ottoman control over this region.
That's true. I mean, no matter what, it was a big boost for the Ottoman Empire, who had already basically encircled the Byzantine Empire at this time, but Constantinople was the city that had remained, and then that becomes the future capital of the Ottoman Empire, now known as Istanbul, for sure. So, I mean, from that perspective, it does too. Now, did it get Europe out of the Dark Ages? I mean, that's no single event can do something like that, but I mean, little things can add up to big things.
How did the contemporary people of Europe react to this event? So, after the city's fall to Mehmet, you can now call me the Conqueror II, the first Europeans to hear about the news outside of the city itself were Venetian and Genoese traders, and they immediately returned to their respective homes and spread the news, to which the response in those cities was absolute terror. Not because of Constantinople's importance historically or religiously, but because their trade had just been impacted and they really liked money.
I mean, it makes sense for Venice. Venice exists because of trade. It is literally built for trade in a crappy, swampy area, dug out of the ground pretty much to be a trading area. And they had traded through that region for a long time. Now, the Venetians had already been trading with the Ottomans for a long time. That relationship already existed, but maybe destabilizing that region might be a little bit harder for them to do that. But again, if the money flow stops, Venice is doomed.
News spread further, and it wasn't long before the city of Rome and the papacy knew of Constantinople's demise. The sitting Pope Nicholas V was absolutely terrified, and he immediately put out the call for a crusade to retake the city. Now, he had this reaction for two main reasons. The first was that Constantinople's capture now meant that the Ottomans could turn their full attention to the north. The second was that Rome was now the last
they'd already
of
done
the
that
major
before.
Christian cities not under the control of non-Christians, and as a result, those that lived there assumed that they would be next.
Now, calling for another crusade is always interesting because the Europeans have been failing to do that for a good couple hundred years. There had been 4 major crusades with other ones after that. The first one being the only one successful for the Christian West. All others were failures, with the fourth being a catastrophic failure, where pretty much it seems like by the 4th century, the people that were coming out of Europe to fight were pretty much just mercenaries who showed up to Constantinople expecting to get paid and stuff like that, not getting it, and then sacking Constantinople. The Christian Crusaders sacking it and demolishing it and looting it big time. And that, by the way, that Fourth Crusade, I don't think Constantinople ever recovered from that Fourth Crusade because of that. It never was once, what it was. And then by this time, by 1453, I mean, the Byzantine Empire is pretty much just Constantinople and a very small territory around it.
There was also some salt in the wound, since Rome and Constantinople were making great strides in fixing their previous schism. So what about the rest of Europe and its secular rulers?
Well, I mean, the schism was so long ago. The schism was back in like 1050. We're talking the 1450s here. So healing a schism, I don't know. I mean, I don't think that was ever going to happen. The schism is the breakup between the Catholic Church and the Byzantine Church. Clear back again in the 1050s. We're talking 400 years later. I don't think that was ever going to come back together. That split is way too deep by now. I mean, it's the 1450s. In 50 years, you're going to have the Protestant Reformation, which is going to be a schism within Catholicism, in a way.
In France, the king was obviously disheartened by the news, but much like his English counterpart, he was busy fighting a war and so was a tad preoccupied. Also, leaving the kingdom that you ruled for several years meant that it was open to being usurped or perhaps reinvaded by those you just defeated. As for the Holy Roman Empire, their relationship with the Byzantine Empire was a tad more complicated. Whilst the leadership there saw the city of Constantinople as a bastion of Christianity, it was populated by the wrong sort of Christians, whom everyone had spent the last 400 years condemning as heretics, and so frankly...
1054, yeah, that's the year of the schism. The Byzantine Empire and the Holy Roman Empire had a lot of rough years.
No love lost. Also, no one could argue about who was the true successor to the Roman Empire anymore. All of this said, the Holy Roman Empire...
Which by far at that time was the Byzantine Empire. It's pretty incredible when you think about the claim the Holy Roman Empire tried to make of being Rome, when the Byzantine Empire is like, hello, we were literally Rome, and we're still continuing. You'd think, if anything, if the Byzantine Empire collapsed, the Holy Roman Empire would like it, because they'd be like, hey, the legitimate claim is gone. Now we can like sneak into that actual the claim of being the successor to Rome, when Byzantine Empire literally was Rome and is at that time. That's another debate, but
Empire now knew that the Ottomans would be pushing north. The emperor at this time, Frederick III, was much more concerned with internal problems and keeping his domains in line, and so he had little to spare for any crusade. As for the other major Catholic nations of Europe, their responses are basically non-existent, meaning that in all likelihood it wasn't that much of a big deal to them, or they simply had more pressing issues. But what about Europe's leading non-Catholic nation, the Orthodox Principality of Moscow?
That makes the most sense, because they have the closest tie to the Orthodox Church, is basically being Orthodox. So far what it looks like, as far as for Western Christian Europe, the people that cared were people that were more invested in trade, like the Venetians in Italy. Whereas you get over to like France and England, they're like, who cares? They're the what type of Christians or whatever. It's so far. Plus we're busy. It's like, who cares? But yeah, this is more interesting. What about other people in that Orthodox family?
Its prince, Vasily II, had previously had a falling out with the leadership of Constantinople due to its aforementioned making up with the Pope. He had previously declared the Moscow Orthodox Church to be independent of the Byzantine one, and with Constantinople now gone, his was now the leading branch.
Interesting, you're getting Orthodox and Catholic Church splitting, and then you're getting like a schism there, and then there's like a schism within the Orthodox Church. I guess this is kind of the history of religion, right? Schisms within schisms within schisms. So you have so many sects, you probably can't keep track of them. Islam had similar things going on.
And so he was just fine with it, and as Vasily's successors would go on to do, Moscow could now claim to be the third Rome, and the latest in the succession.
They did. Russia
of the Roman
claimed they were the
Empire
next
of
Rome as
antiquity.
well.
And so from this we can see that for the most part Europe's reaction, barring that of the Italian states, was fairly muted. This was mostly because the fall of a city of heretics, even a prestigious one like Constantinople, had little immediate effect on them. And as for the Pope's crusade, well, Nicholas did soon try to force the hands of Europe's secular leadership, but before he could begin assembling a Christian response, he caught a small case of death, meaning that no attempt to retake the city was ever made. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and thank you for watching, with a special thanks to my patrons, James Bizanet, Kelly Moneymaker, The Pastry Section,
Patrons everywhere,
Marvin Cassow,
man.
Rob Waterhouse,
You make YouTube
Danny Maloney,
exist.
Mo,
Thank you.
Aaron the White, James Castaneda, Jordan Longley, Marcus Arsner, Jerry Lambdin, Gustav Swan, Rashid Ali, Colin Castleman, Copper Tone, Izzy, David Silverman, Spinning Three Plates, Winston Kaywood, Spencer Lightfoot, Maggie Paxkowski, Matthew Shipley, Anthony Beckett, Fortunate Calf, Robert Wetzel, Lexi Schwinn, and Sky Chappelle.
All right, we're back. So another nice, short, succinct video from History Matters. That's kind of their style. They do these shorter ones and kind of go over some basics and things like that without a credible amount of detail, but they're great starting points because after watching this, you could look specifically and try to look more detail into like the Venetians and their concerns, or the Russians, the French, the English, all that stuff. It's a great kind of starting point that way, which is really good. So that was informative to see. And again, I guess just kind of what I was saying just a second ago there, the idea seems to be is people that were economically invested in kind of the stability of Constantinople, like the Venetians, seem to be the ones with the loudest reactions or concerns about it. You did see the Pope, who, again, it seems like even in the 1400s, was still trying to maybe exert more authority over the Orthodox Church, even though the Pope has basically not had any authority ever since the Great Schism in the 1054. And then the other nations are just kind of busy with what they were already doing. Some of them, like in England and France, might be like, wait, Constantinople, like, that's still a thing? That didn't fall yet? Because Constantinople has been sieged and attempted siege forever. I mean, like, for centuries and centuries from different groups. Vikings came down there. Islamic groups have already tried to do that before, and the Ottoman Turks being obviously the big successful ones there. But it's already been a long history of them, and in the West, they're probably, surprised that it's even standing anymore with that as well. Now, another thing that people talked about, and I have talked about too, is with what they believe is the economic instability that happened there, that this indirectly may have encouraged European traders to start look at other types of routes to get through to Asia, which those routes had come through regions in the Middle East, right? So it's within one generation here where you start seeing Spanish, the Portuguese, Italians like Christopher Columbus or something, investing in trying to find new routes and having this kind of more indirect, maybe not, can't just say that with fall of Constantinople, Western Europe's access to the stuff coming through the Middle East, basically the Silk Road, is cut off. That's not the case. That's an oversimplification. But maybe trying to, encouraging people to find other routes. So, I know a lot of people are kind of divided on the issue of the fall of Constantinople, encouraging or having some kind of impact on the age of exploration. And it seems to be getting more minimal. And I don't know if that's more of like a Eurocentric take, to say that no, that didn't happen. It was more about European ingenuity or something like that. Probably more to research there, but the timing is very interesting to see those happen there, as the Christian West had traded through this region through the Byzantine Empire for centuries, and now without that necessarily. But then we already know that they were trading with the Ottoman Empire long before that, especially like the Venetians and stuff like that. But maybe not completely disassociated, but maybe not as much as classical history is stated. All right, well, with that, this was very good. Hopefully you can get some good talking points that you can bring up maybe even in your own classes or as you're studying your own things here. But regardless, the fall of Constantinople in 1453 is a very, very important event. That is going to, again, it's the end of an empire. And again, depending on how closely you tie other major events to it, it can be even more important to study. But that, again, is up for debate and more research for sure, of course. All right, thanks again to all of my patrons. Thank you so much for doing that. There's so many of you. I really appreciate you supporting the channel through that way, and hopefully you enjoy being able to have some influence over the videos that come through. If you're interested in that, the link to Patreon is down below. But there are lots of other ways you can support the channel too, through channel memberships. That is one way. Come into our live streams and you can really enjoy your channel membership benefits with that as well. But yeah, thanks for doing that. Also, some other things you might want to get involved in if you don't know, we are now streaming on Twitch. Do a lot of gaming stuff on Twitch, and that channel has been growing incredibly fast to go. Also, along with my gaming channel on YouTube, Mr. Terry Gaming. Links to all that stuff is down below, so you can join us with some awesome gaming and a lot of history related gaming in there. So love to see you around in the community. But regardless, thank you for being here. Thanks for watching the video, and even just clicking a like button, and actually just even watching is so appreciative here to be part of our history community. All right, and with that, we'll see you next time. Bye.